The report's been made parliamentary papers. The member for Melbourne, who's been very patient, has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. I understand that leave will be denied, so I move that so much of standing and session orders be suspended as would prevent private members' business notice number 1, given for Tuesday 25th of June 2013, Telecommunications Amendment Protecting Local Workers Bill 2013, standing in the name of the member for Melbourne, being called on immediately and being given precedence over all other business until all stages of the bill have been concluded. Speaker, there are about 390 jobs that are about to be lost starting in the next few days unless this parliament acts before it rises. Jobs associated with producing and printing the yellow pages and the white pages are about to start going offshore to India and the Philippines in a few days' time unless we act. There is a simple mechanism to stop this, Speaker, and that is contained in the bill. It's also one that I've raised with the government on a number of occasions over a number of months, and in the absence of a proper response to that, and with only a few days left, the appropriate course is to suspend standing orders to deal with this urgent matter. Currently, Speaker, the jobs associated with the white pages and the yellow pages, both in print and online, are all taking place here in Australia, primarily in Melbourne and in Sydney. Now, Telstra and its subsidiary Sensis is currently under an obligation, a legal obligation that flowed out of the privatisation of Telstra to produce the white pages and make it available to anyone who wants it. And that's an appropriate service that it provides to the Australian community, and it's appropriate that this parliament continues to regulate that, because Telstra was a public company that was built up with public support, including government support and support from this parliament. The mechanism in this bill is a simple one. The mechanism, and member for Kennedy says it's the people of Australia who built up Telstra, its predecessors. Now, the mechanism proposed in this bill is a very simple one. It says that for so long as Telstra, through its subsidiary Sensis, produces the white pages and the yellow pages in online form and in print form, they should be produced here in Australia. Now, it would come as a shock to many people if you asked them, but they learned that the white pages and the yellow pages could potentially be being produced overseas. But that is what is about to happen. And we know that because Telstra and Sensis have announced that from the 1st of July they want to make 390 jobs redundant and sent offshore and outsourced. They will be sent to India and they will be sent to Philippines, where the graphic design work and the call centre work will be done. Now, this is a company, Telstra, that last year made a record profit, and a record half-yearly profit of in the order of $1.6 billion. And its subsidiary Sensis made a profit of $650 million. Simply to make a bit of extra cash, they are about to make 400 jobs disappear from this country. Now, when there is a threat to car manufacturing in this country, when there is the prospect of hundreds of people being made redundant, this parliament and the government rightly says that this is a matter of national importance, and we should do what we need to focus on it, to see what we can do to stop the jobs going offshore or to mitigate it. Well, I say, Speaker, that a job in graphic design or in a call centre should be worth as much as a job making a car. And those jobs should be performed here, and it is perfectly legitimate. It is perfectly legitimate to ask what was formerly a public company but remains a national carrier and a highly regulated one at that. It is perfectly legitimate to ask a profitable company to keep those jobs here on shore. Now, I mentioned the urgency of this, Speaker. Over 2 months ago, I wrote to the relevant minister and said, there is a problem coming, and we are about in this country to see almost 400 jobs added to the scrap heap and sent offshore simply to make some extra money and some extra profit for a very large and very profitable company. I haven't had a response to that letter. When I called, I was told that the government was considering its position. And here we are, 2.5 days left before the end of this parliament, and from the 1st of July there are a number of people, many of whom are in Melbourne, who are the high-value, high-wage jobs that we hear a lot of talk about from Labor, and they are about to lose them. And they are about to lose them because it is said it is cheaper to go to India or cheaper to go to the Philippines for this highly educated workforce. And so it will be the case that for the sake of making an extra few dollars for a company that's already bringing in massive record half-yearly profits, that when you go to organise your ad in the white pages or the yellow pages, it'll be done in India or it'll be done in the Philippines. Now, I suspect, Speaker, that if you ask most people in this country, what would you prefer? Would you prefer 400 trained people stay in high-skilled, high-wages job here? Or would you prefer to allow Telstra to send those 400 jobs offshore just to make a bit of money? They would say, let's keep that workforce here. Because it's important to recognise, Speaker, this question of globalisation and the questions of the challenges that this country faces doesn't just exist in the manufacturing sector, doesn't just exist in the tourism sector, it doesn't just exist in education. It exists in those sectors where highly educated and skilled workers are now competing with people overseas. And this is the kind of step that we have to take if we want to turn the phrase of high-value, high-skilled, high-wage workforce into a meaningful reality. Because if we don't, it really means nothing. And we've heard a lot about protecting local jobs over the last couple of months. And our criticism, my criticism, has been that it's been very high on rhetoric but low on action. Well, here's a chance to take some action. Here's a chance for a very simple measure. If we support this suspension, and if we debate this very simple bill and pass it this afternoon, because it is a simple bill, it's well understood, capable of being able to be easily understood, pass it this afternoon, and then get it to the Senate in the last couple of days of this parliament, we will have saved almost 400 jobs here in this country without Parliament having to spend one extra cent or the government having to spend one extra cent. All we would have done is said Telstra has an obligation to the Australian people. Telstra, as a successor to public companies built up by the Australian people, continues to have obligations to those Australian people. And that's not just obligations to make the white pages available, but it's an obligation to make sure it's produced locally. This will be a very simple bill to support, come at no cost to the government, and it will make a massive, massive difference to a lot of people. And if we don't support this bill, then from the 1st of July, 390 jobs, including many, many in my electorate of Melbourne, are going to start going offshore. And by the end of September, they will have gone. That is what Telstra and its subsidiary Sensis has said. Now, given that Parliament is rising and given that there is currently no intention to reconvene before September, this is our last chance. This is our last chance. If the government has another plan to save these jobs, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it, but we are at 5 minutes to midnight for these workers and their families. And for the cost of absolutely zero, a public company that the government heavily advertises in and has a commercial relationship with, and that we regulate in respect of other things, could make some contribution to Australian people and to Australian society. And so I hope that this suspension and the bill itself gains support. It would put some meat on the bones of all the talk about protecting local workers that we've heard, and we would be sending a very clear signal that a job in these white-collar industries is just as important as a job in blue-collar industries.